So some are going to say that you should absolutely never relax on your rules, and that's one way to play this trading game. But let's dig into it just a little bit. Let's say that you want to expand your repertoire, right? Like let's say that part of your rule set says that I don't trade before earnings, right? And let's tease that out a little bit. What does that get you? Well, it gets you safety from volatility. What does it hold you back from? It holds you back from potentially holding out for a much larger gain. If you're somebody that's going to be a swing trader or a longer term investor, if you're longer term, then you're going to be holding through some earnings reports. If you're a swing trader, then maybe you do, maybe you don't. But part of the idea isn't to just say, oh, I'll never do this. If you're somebody that wants to expand your capability and expand what you're able to take advantage of, then the question becomes, well, how can I take advantage of earnings? And what kind of rules do I want to govern that, right? So it's not just bending a rule here and there. It's within like trying to figure out how can you have a better strategy. So just to go a little bit further with this earnings example, let's say that your stock is consolidating nicely. It's pulling into a support level. Or let's even take a real example. Let's take an example of Twitter, right? Twitter had a fantastic setup ahead of earnings. This is actually going back a couple of years now, but this is one of the first earnings plays that I did. Maybe about when was this? It was Oktoberfest 2013. Shit, I'm dating myself. So about 7 years ago, right? So Twitter is setting up. I'm going to play this thing. It's coming in, it's consolidating, and I wanted to play earnings. So what did I do? At the time, my rule said do not trade ahead of earnings, but I wanted to expand. So I'm thinking, well, what's the reason for that rule? The reason for that rule was to keep me safe, and it was keeping me safe because if you buy stock ahead of earnings, then that stock could fall and gap down below where you have your stop loss, and you could end up losing dramatically more than what you intended, right? So good rule for that. But a way to play earnings without that risk is by buying the option, right? Because if you're treating the entire option, the premium that you're paying, as your risk, then you found a way to limit your risk. It's whatever you paid in premium. So then it's figuring out, well, which is the right option, which is the right strike to select, right? And that's for another video, or if you want to check out my friend Felix Fry, he has fantastic options education. But anyway, back to this. So figured out a way to play earnings, and in that case it worked, and this is a strategy that I've incorporated since in figuring out, okay, if I want to be in during earnings, like I can play it with options, and it's just going to be a matter of finding the right strike price and the right expiration date. Fantastic. All right, there's one way. Another way that we can play option or play earnings in that scenario, right? Rather than just having a blanket rule like, oh, I don't trade during earnings. Another way you could do it is by figuring out what's the worst that could possibly happen to this stock. Like in the unlikely event that it decides to go way against you, how far could it possibly fall before you have a chance to get out, right? In some cases, and I'll take another example, there was a stock that I was trading called Applied Optoelectronics. The ticker symbol is AAOI. And this is one that I was also trading a couple of years ago, right before the first time that I went on, well actually no, it was the second time that I was on NASDAQ TV. And it was, at the time I thought that, oh, like it was forming a flag pattern. could potentially break out again. I was already up on this position, I forget how much, but earnings the next day, and then I'm thinking, well, let's say it runs 10%, right? All right, could make an extra 10% on this trade. That sounds really good. But if it falls, where is support? And the first support level left, and at this time it had run for a long time. Support wasn't all the way down until the 50-day moving average, and that was about 25% away. So does it make sense then to risk making 10% where you could lose 25? In that case, no. So I sold, and sure enough, what happened? It tanked and actually tested that 50-day moving average. So I was very happy that I decided not to do it in that scenario. But the point is, figure out what is the worst case scenario if you do hold through an event like earnings. Or if you have another rule, start to think through, start to question why that rule exists. What could be another approach? How could you learn and expand and get to that next level? How can you challenge the status quo? That's going to be your path to greater growth. Sometimes the rule will be a rule that you want to hold on to and it continues to serve you, but if you don't question whatever the status quo is, then you're just going to continue to have the status quo.